This is the weekly roundup presented by the Conversation Project. I'm Jay Clifton Payne. I have 12 stories from the past week that I'll present to you here that caught my attention based on your engagement all week long with our feeds for the Conversation Project and our show, Things You Might Not Have Heard. These came from Friday, March 21st to Friday, March 28th, which makes this the wrap up for the week ending March 29th, 2025. Donald Trump's in the news a lot. Luigi Mangione's in the news with a surprise that may not be a surprise. And surprise, your DNA may be up for sale, actually it is, by 23andMe, and more coming up for this past week. Reminding you that our website home is thisistheconversationproject.com. You can see all the stuff about us, find out about our origin story, find out how you can engage with us. We'll explain the feeds and all that stuff at the end of the show, but you can also email us at theconversationinbox@gmail.com for any questions that come about inside the show or outside as well. Remind you that our sponsor for this week is Ground News. Get in on the ground for the best news coverage available because it's the most biased, most non-biased coverage available because it's all the coverage available. Go to thisistheconversationproject.com/ground news and use our affiliate link to give us a small commission. You'll get 40% off its Vantage plan and other plans as well by going to that link. Now, 12 conversational headlines from the past week. Starting off with our first story. At number one, the headline reads, Trump demands Roberts rein in federal judges. Donald Trump took the week to slam federal judges for blocking his immigration orders, specifically, and other ones in general, calling them radical left lunatics. That's a quote. And the president called for Chief Justice John Roberts to discipline the judiciary. Like, tell all the judges to back off me, man. Let me get stuff done. Roberts actually responded by defending the judicial independence, the process, pushing back on Trump's impeachment talk on the judges that are basically against him. The clash highlights deepening tensions between the executive ambition and judicial oversight. Essentially, just because the executive says he wants to do it and tries to do it doesn't mean that it's legal, it's within Constitution, and judges should not say, no, sir, you should probably not do that. You do have checks and balances after all. We do have checks and balances, don't we? Well, anyway, let's get to story number two. Headline for that one reads, Pope Francis discharged after pneumonia hospitalization. He has left the Rome hospital after being treated for double pneumonia for months. The 88-year-old pontiff had multiple respiratory complications during this time since February. He briefly appeared in the Vatican window to thank his supporters and confirm his ongoing recovery. But insiders say his schedule is limited. He has a lot to go for in his still recovery, nowhere near going the full work yet. But he has still been engaged while he was in the hospital, doing what he can to sign off for paperwork and stay engaged. We'll be seeing him sooner than I'm sure his bosses would like because he's the Pope, but we'll see him soon going back to his full duties. Nationwide rallies came off across the nation with protests against the Postal Service with a privatization plan. This is not in effect yet, but protests have erupted across the U.S. as citizens are pushing back against some proposals to privatize postal services. The opponents say the plan would harm rural communities and raise costs. Supporters argue that the privatization would actually improve logistics and efficiency. Congress remains divided on this issue. Number one, they don't want to get rid of something that's an institution. And for many folks in rural areas, this is where communication happens. You may be someplace suburban or urban, and UPS and FedEx and Amazon may be at your door every single day. Maybe not so much in the deep parts of rural areas, farming towns, things like that. This is something that will affect a lot of things. Yes, Postal Service could run better, but privatizing it, and while the administration is sort of projecting they want to privatize a lot of things, doesn't necessarily make it go better. At story number four, Trump withdraws Stefanik's UN nomination to hold House majority. Now, this is something that is a bit of a heartbreaker, as Elise Stefanik, who is a Republican House member for New York, essentially got the rug pulled from under her while she was, of course, nominated to be the UN ambassador, had a nomination first asked politely and then officially pulled by Donald Trump because she's a key House seat. The votes in the House and the Senate both are so tight that right now Donald Trump's a little worried about getting his agenda through. And since the governor of New York is kind of waffling on how she's going to actually fill this spot, maintaining that level of commitment in Congress to be all Republicans or most Republicans is key. Stefanik spent the week posting about her love for being in Congress and how she's going to miss things. only to find out in the middle of the week that she was going to go back to work. It may be seen as some as a bit of embarrassment. It may be seen as some as the strategic thing that needed to be done. We've not heard from Stefanik yet on what she feels about going back yet, other than she's glad to go back to going to work, which, is what you say when things happen. But no insider word on whether this was a real disappointment to not go to the UN and do the work there, or whether she actually is a bit relieved on not having to go to the UN and do work there. That does mean we don't have an ambassador at the moment, but the way things work, maybe we'll kick the UN out of the nation. Maybe that will help as well. Or not help. We shall see. Donald Trump didn't do this one, but the guy he put in charge did. And this became a large, very big, very nasty, very dumb thing we talked about all week long. Starting off with Monday morning, where we got the word from the defense secretary accidentally leaked Yemen strike plans to a journalist. Pete Hegseth, that the Secretary of Defense, accidentally sent Yemen strike plans to the editor of The Atlantic via Signal, the service for sending messages back and forth via end-to-end encryption, but not inside of the phones. It included sensitive operations details and upcoming airstrikes, an airstrike that had come 2 hours after the messages went through. The Pentagon investigation is underway. Bipartisan lawmakers are raising alarm about using things like this and the fact that these things weren't put in the skiff. The people in charge were going back and forth. And how did this one random guy get into the thing, which is the only reason why we know Signal's being used for these things? Now, what we've learned in the past couple of weeks is Signal's being used for a lot of things, a lot of communication in the DoD. And in fact, it is actually, says many people, installed on devices automatically. But it's used for quick messaging things, not to be used for things that are sensitive or anything that has classified information. Hegseth says there's no information was classified during the transmission. So was said by Tulsi Gabbard and the as the DNI and the head of security, national security advisor, saying nothing was that bad. But all the folks that are involved in there were passing back information that sounded pretty sensitive, sounded pretty important. And when the journalist realized 2 hours later after the chat it happened, he pulled himself out of the chat, wrote a quick story, and went to the world. Now, this strike was, of course, weeks ago and came out as a way to reopen channels in the Middle East for basically keeping the Houthi rebels from attacking ships out there because they're supporting the Hamas stuff. But there also was some back and forth in the messages about how we, the U.S., are always bailing out Europe and why are we doing this? Plus, maybe some speaking out of turn, saying that some folks might not have agreed exactly the way President Trump was saying things. Unfortunately, because all the people involved said ain't nothing to see here, the journalists actually put out all the text messages, most of the text messages, that showed there was something to be seen here. And the conversation among people who've dealt with military stuff, myself included, and many of my folks, my compadres who are still in or have now retired or separated, all agreed that we would have been court-martialed, put in jail, maybe shot for doing something less than what these guys did here. And they're the bosses. Our story at number 6, we go to Snow White, which opened up last week and bombed heavily. Also opening last week was Alto Nights. I'm not sure why they put the two together, basically because I guess they were tired of beating up on Snow White. But these were the two big bombs from last week's opening weekend for movies. Snow White opened at $43 million domestic, about $43 million overseas. It took about $250 to make, so it's not going to make its money back anytime soon. Alto Nights took a bunch of money to make, but only made $317 in its open release, about 2,000 theater openings, one of the lowest releases in modern history on a widescreen opening. Critics say that for the Snow White, it's franchise fatigue. It's essentially, the bad part about it is they're tired of all these remakes of the movies. Even though Snow White, the original, was one of the shortest movies because of the very short, very tight script. Just, Snow White runs away, eats the apple, all that stuff, and the prince was there. It was there. Also, the wokeness, which come up, the studio bracing for a lot of things about the changing of the story, the dwarves not being dwarves, the prince not being a prince, both the actresses playing the main characters are, not being white as snow, if you will, and the white as snow character having bad words to say about, Gaza. There's that. Bad marketing, weak marketing was the blame for Alto Nights because Robert De Niro versus Robert De Niro. I saw plenty of clips of it all over the place, but didn't quite understand what the movie was about. Apparently no one else did either, and no one went to go see that one in the weekend. A quick stop to request. Quick stop to see if you will actually help us grow the News Nerd Nation with the Conversation Project and things like this show here, the weekly roundup, and the daily show, things you might have heard. We produce these shows on on X, on YouTube, and on Facebook. We have smaller versions, clips and things on TikTok as well, plus an audio version of these podcasts and our newsletter on the email that you can get straight to your inbox. To get those things, you need to do a couple things. Like what you're seeing here, like the performance we're doing right now. And if you like it, the algorithm will show it to more people, and hopefully they'll like it. I'll know I'm hitting the right notes with stories, with tone, and things. We're doing a little something different today with bullets instead of full-out readouts, and it's working in some cases and not in others. I'm getting less news, if you will, going forward. So we're going to see how this works going forward. But we are doing our best to update the way things go and make it more pithy. We're trying. Like what you like if you like it. If you don't, email me, let me know what's not working. Share it with folks that might like it, or we have people who actually hate like it, if you will. So you can do that as well. And if you want to get this in your feeds directly, or one of our alternative versions, the audio podcast, the email newsletter, go to our website or click right here, subscribe in the form you want to, so you make sure you get us every single day, every single week, and in some cases, like for the feeds, we'll get to in a bit, every hour, every 50 minutes or so, every hour. Luigi Mangione is in the news as he had a court appearance, or was making a court appearance. We're not talking about the fact that he's getting a laptop to work on his court cases. That may actually pop up because we posted that on Friday late, so it may pop up in the news for next week's roundup, or the news for next week. But right now, we're dealing with a little bit of contraband. Mangione is on trial for allegedly murdering a CEO of an insurance company, and they found notes in his socks shaped like hearts. Court officials say it violates the special treatment protocols granted due to his health and security statuses. Now, these notes contains names, numbers, and legal strategy notes inside of his notes, and they're heart-shaped, which is kind of weird. So some of them are deemed to be kind of, wonky. You can see one on the video, watching the video here. That's one of them in there going forward. But obviously, getting notes into his socks, and why is he getting socks? They're donating clothes to him so he can wear them in court, and that's part of the not being totally cruel. But in the process, people are sliding in little hearts, little notes, little things that are not exactly what he should be getting in court. Judge may reconsider the terms of courtroom access if things like this continue. Trump actually did some work this week, which caused a lot of people panic this week, as he imposed 25% tariffs on foreign automotives. That 25% tariffs is on imported cars and auto parts. All cars, all parts, until we fix something. He says this will revive American manufacturing and protect jobs. Essentially, if the cars coming into the nation, or the parts coming into the nation, cost more money, then the automakers will buy more parts from American builders, and they'll sell more American cars because they're worth that. He also told the automakers here in the States, don't raise your prices, which is going to be hard when the tariffs are going up to raise the prices on the parts, and the dealers here are going to have to eat those costs. 25% of a cost is a lot. Economists are warning that the price hikes and global retaliation is going to be massive, and costs of cars can go up to about $5,000 to $10,000 on average. Major auto industry leaders are trying to figure out what to do and asking Congress to intervene, because Trump can lobby a tariff and that can go into effect. They all go into effect essentially on the 2nd. It's Liberation Day, he says. We'll see what happens when all these tariffs he's thrown back and forth do go to effect, and how they will affect the markets officially, because right now everything is down because they're worried about what's going to happen. Pre-bids are in for negotiating for Super Bowl ads for 2026. And the price, right now, the target is $7 million for your 30-second ad for this upcoming football game. Network cites the record viewership from last year's, and actually years before, and multiple platform exposure for the brand. Essentially, NBC Universal is having NBC. They have all their sister channels. They have their network online. They have their streaming services. They've got Peacock. They got all these things to actually share their ads with in ad nauseum, pun intended, that you're paying a good chunk for that. Now, last year, some ads went for about 6 to 8 million when they're all said and done. Started at 6 and last minute went to 8, but 7 is going to be your starting price right now. Now, this may change based on the actual need to fill. If you fill them up early, then they cost more for those last minute buys. If you don't fill them up fast enough, they'll bring you some discounts. And if you get in early enough, you can actually negotiate something, because that's why the early negotiation. But $7 million is your target price right now. Advertisers can actually opt out of some digital and only do digital stuff instead. That will go for digital stuff around the Super Bowl. So you can get a little cheaper on those as well. But the fractured market for advertising, because it goes everywhere, means you get more bang for your buck. So they're going to charge more for your bang, if you will, and get more bucks. A story that's been haunting me a lot, as I've been using the word unintended consequences for many of the actions, executive orders, and just the words said by Donald Trump lately, and what they actually trickle down to. This story right here is really bugging me. I actually did a story, a quick video. You'll see it on the TikTok if you watch TikTok clips, or on the secondary channel. You're welcome. And it wasn't very coherent. It wasn't very good. It was. I didn't really have the notes in front of me. I just went off some riffs on how the changing in history, because of, as this headline says, divisive narratives and DEI, is not good for us. The headline for the story is Trump orders Smithsonian to remove divisive narratives. He has signed an executive order that demands changes into some exhibits in the Smithsonian, an entire library and network of museums, to be held by Vice President J.D. Vance. It targets displays that centers on race, gender, and colonialism. Things that were a part of our past, that we learned from and got better. Supposedly, supporters of this thought process say it promotes patriotic storytelling, and critics say it's historical censorship. Not telling the whole story and whitewashing it, my words specifically, to make it sound like everything was hunky-dory and peachy way back when in reality it wasn't. And it's good to know how we got past those things. Creators are reviewing with compliance while defending academic autonomy. They're going to do the best to do what they're told to do because it's their job, but also want to make sure that people know these are how you learn things. This is how you know what happens. And if we take this exhibit away and don't talk about it, no one can see it, no one can question it, no one can be curious about it, no one can expand on those issues. At number 11, 23andMe filed for bankruptcy this week, and the CEO actually stepped down because she wasn't getting stuff done. That's Ann Wojcicki resigned with new leadership team coming. She's staying on the board to be on the board for whatever, but the testing firm has filed for bankruptcy after a failed talk for sales. Update to this, they basically have a buyer now, or at least have the ability to sell themselves even in bankruptcy to get something out of it. So that's where the actual issue lies with this. Now, for almost 20 years, 23andMe has been gathering people's DNA for various things, such as finding your relatives, or doing things for family trees and things like that. Finding more information about your background, your medical history, because you can see where things lie. But there's a difference between privacy and market conditions. Public privacy concerns about the market saturation of having people's DNA information out there is an issue. And the company falling into disarray is an issue, because whoever buys this company now owns your DNA or records of your DNA. So the courts have allowed 23andMe to sell itself, or to look for a seller to get itself as a way out of the bankruptcy terms, even though bankruptcy helps protect itself going forward. But that doesn't mean you're particularly safe. Many folks have given you reasons and ways how to erase your account. So if you want that, go look online. They'll tell you how to delete your account if you're worried about it. But in the meantime, who actually owns your DNA? That's a good question. It's in bankruptcy court right now. So technically, Donald Trump and the federal bankruptcy courts own your DNA. What they'll do with it, they'll probably do nothing with it. What the next buyer will do with it, we'll have to see. And finally, the story number 12, which is actually probably the most important story this week for a global scale of things that isn't tariffs, is another head scratcher, but it's something that just sort of seems the way things play out. Russia, Ukraine reach Black Sea agreement. The U.S. announced that Russia and Ukraine have reached an agreement to cease the use of force in the Black Sea. This is on top of the agreement they had to stop firing against energy type things in Ukraine in their war. So it's not a full ceasefire yet, but they're not firing at power plants and nuclear plants and not firing at themselves in the Black Sea. Asterisk. Terms include ship inspection protocols and safe passage routes for all. Russia says full compliance hinges on the partial sanctions being relief. That's where your asterisk is. Western allies cautiously welcome the breakthrough, but remain skeptical because of said asterisk. Ukraine was like, fine, whatever, we'll go with it because Ukraine has no cards to play, as Donald Trump likes to say these days. His new catchphrase is don't have the cards. So Ukraine is going along with whatever the United States is essentially arguing is in good favor so that they can hopefully eventually end this thing and hopefully end it without losing too much territory. Right now, territory is going to be lost. The problem is Russia didn't quite say we're down with this. They say it sounds nice, but if you could sweeten the pot. So they haven't quite full-throated went in on the actual ceasefire agreement. That's the thing. Russia hadn't said, yeah, we're down with it yet. Ukraine's going for it, but Russia, not quite, not yet. Those were 12 stories that we presented to you over the past week in our program called Things You Might Have Heard. And we got those stories from the feeds on Facebook and X. We'll explain that in just a bit. Right now, another pause to do extended talk about our sponsor, that is Ground News. Ground News helps us get work done here for the Conversation Project, for me personally, because I'm a news nerd, and for you as well to get the full story of things out there. What you do is you go to Ground News. You use our affiliate link at thisisaconversationproject.com/ground news and get 40% off their Vantage plan or their other plans as well, so that you can get the news the way you need to. Not so much the way you want to, but the way you need to. And I explain that by saying that we all know that each news provider has their own sort of take, their own sort of flavor, and in many cases, their own sort of spin on how things work out. And so if you tend to silo yourself out there in a certain news group gathering, or just by luck and happenstance, you only get news from certain sources, you're only getting news from certain sources saying the news the certain way. The facts may be skewered or the opinion may be overblown. Using Ground News allows you to look at any story on a local, on a national, on a global scale and see who's covering it, what outlets are actually reporting on it, how they are funded and operated, and who's actually pulling the strings, and if they have a bias that may be conservative or liberal that may affect how you read it, how the words are being put out there, and how you actually perceive it. And one cool thing about them is their blind spot feature. That is features that are various stories in the past week that have been getting exclusive coverage based on one opinion or the other, on a liberal bent or conservative bent, if you will, that lets you know whether it's something that the conservatives are over speaking about that isn't a big deal, or liberals are under speaking about it because they don't want you to actually know about it, or vice versa. You get those types of things and more. You see where each and every news source comes from, what they're talking about, how they got to be there, who owns them, and why they may feel a need to present in a certain way by using Ground News. You can put it on your phone or watch it on your web browser, and you use it by going to our affiliate link, and you get it on a subscription that gives you the best use of all the features. Go to thisisaconversationproject.com/ground news. This is theconversationproject.com/ground news and get in on this great deal, 40% off their Vantage plan right now. And we get a small commission for bringing you into the door. So get the news that's beyond the headlines, beyond all the shouting back and forth, so you can see who's saying what and understand exactly what's going on with Ground News. The Conversation Project lives online at thisisaconversationproject.com. You can go to our website and you can see for yourself past news stories, past articles, past things we've done. You can also see the various places you can find us for these types of things. We're on YouTube, we're on X, we're on Facebook for this thing in particular, the long form stuff, short form things on TikTok and YouTube Shorts. We also have an email newsletter that gets you just straight links straight into your inbox so you know what's going on, but without my face and my voice. And if you like my voice but not my face, we have audio podcasts. Click the pages there to see where the things are there. We also have links for more sponsors. So you can see all the ones, and they're all affiliate links. So if you buy from a sponsor, we get a small commission. And for our partnerships page. Now, our partnerships page are where we have our partners. These are people who give us a monthly subscription, if you will, monthly donation, if you will, to help keep things going along. Right now, our esteemed partners happen to be Harold Braxton, Colby Green, and Elton Kidd, and Joy Winters and the Spare Change venue. Different tiers of levels for giving, and you give a little bit, and we help to use it to pay for things here, buy equipment, pay for subscriptions, things along that level. We ask you, if you enjoyed what you got from here and you got this far, consider being a partner. Or if you're watching on YouTube, it's as simple as clicking the join for the membership things is there. They work the same way. And you can help us do more things. Now, people in the membership and people in the partnerships get a little extra from us. We send out extra things throughout the week and allow you to see more details going forward. This week we had a lot of things happening for. It was spring break, so I was working about halftime. There's some things I keep up with while we're not in school, but I had more time to sit in the computer and tinker around and try some things that I've been testing. So we did some things and some format things, some audio things, some presentation things, working on some other projects and ways to present them. So you'll see those coming out very soon. Thank you so much for all the responses I got from people either who emailed me or via folks that are partners. But you'll see those things come out soon. But if you want to get more insight on how things go and get the first word, not necessarily the only word, because other folks do as well, become a partner, go to our partners page, or go straight to buymeacoffee.com/jclevelandpayne and find the tier that's good for you. Now, the real calls to action are the work you need to do. Reminder, our website, this is theconversationproject.com. All the calls to action, including seeing old episodes, partnerships, sponsorships, that's there as well. Now, our email address, theconversationinbox@gmail.com. Stay in conversation. This is not a monologue. This is not just me repeating back stories of the week. This is a conversation, and this part of it comes from the feeds and you just telling me what you think about the stories. Now, these stories that we picked here for the 12 that were redone were part of the stories we picked for the headlines in things you might have heard from Monday through Friday. You follow us on our feeds on Facebook and X, and you tell us what stories are conversational. We choose from them. We give them the daily choosing, the daily picks. And then at the end of the week, we tell you stories that need a bit updating or some that you might have forgotten about that were kind of important. Facebook.com/thisisconversationproject and X.com/th_conversation are our feeds. So look for us there. Subscribe to us there. And every 50 minutes or so, we post articles, headlines from various different sources. And it's up to you to just see if the headline is, likable or maybe unlikable and engage in the story. Click whatever emoji face works for you. If it's X, obviously all you can do is heart it. But if it's on Facebook, like it, love it, put the little mean emoji face on it. What do you want to reply to it, respond to it, get into chats with people who are also watching it, share with other people, engage with it that way, and reply back to me in emails. So we talk about it as well. And the more engagement that a story gets, literally the more engagement you touched on a particular link, a particular posting, the better chance of talking about it. On Monday, we'll give you 10 stories from the top 30 to 40 or so stories of the weekend. We get about 90 stories in a weekend, about 30 a day. With that 30 a day, for Tuesday through Friday, we'll give you 8 stories from 15, 16 or so, the top stories that come in through the day there. So Monday, 10 stories, the rest of the week, 8 stories that you deem as conversational. We pick from those large swaths of stories that got the juice. And if you say that the story we picked aren't the right ones or you want to dispute something back and forth, just email me at theconversationinbox@gmail.com. We can talk there or comment in the video, comment in the audios as need be. With that, we've wrapped up this edition of the weekly roundup for March 29th, 2025. Bit faster, a bit quicker. We went with the bullets that we had a very faster tone to it. Unfortunately, it did not have the context that I wanted it to have. It didn't really tell the full story. We may just go back to a small blurb, but a quick read of the blurb. The problem is I start commentary and it goes from there. Now, if you like what you receive with the updates of the stories and the links to the stories as well, so you can go back and see what's going on, and the commentary in my voice, in my thought process, and if you can't figure out which way I lean, we can talk about that as well. I'm right of center, but I'm not a Trump fan. Take that as you want to. Email me at theconversationinbox@gmail.com or reply to the video and let me know what it is we want to fight about, because sometimes it's a fight. In the meantime, love you guys so much. Life is a marathon, try not to make it a sprint. So make sure you're staying limber and staying hydrated and stay on task for all the grand things you're to do. We're going to wrap it up for this one with this new time hack and see if we can do this continuously going forward. We'll see you on Monday with things you might have heard, 10 stories of the week. And again, come Saturday with the wrap up for the week, the weekly roundup, just like this.